And the
podcast
begins with a song of rebellion.
How can this
podcast
be my life?
CD Burners.
Look at you, fine gentlemen.
Where the hell are you?
I'm in my studio room here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Do you live in Pittsburgh?
I do now.
You don't sound happy about it.
No, it's just like it's so cold, you know, like I haven't lived in South Dakota for like 12 years. I was in California in Orange County for like 3 and then Florida for a bit before that.
Back to that Midwest cold.
Bro, I love
baby.
Pittsburgh. I'm a huge Pittsburgh fan, so I'm jealous.
It.
Actually,
It's fun. I could just do without the winter.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest.
Guys, welcome to the show. Nick Thomas from The Spill Canvas. Nick, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to CD Burners. We did a little bit of a deep dive on No Really, I'm Fine. That was the album we chose to focus on for this episode. And dude, there's not like a ton of info out there. There's not even like a wiki for this album, which is crazy to me because this album performed really well. It was number 2 on Heat Seekers, number 143 on the Billboard charts. It came out in October 2nd, 2007. And I believe this was your first release on Warner Brothers on Sire. Is that correct? Your first major label release?
That is correct. Absolutely.
hey, do you know what this podcast? Because it was really funny because TJ and we did one with you back in 2017. TJ was like, I was like, dude, this is a little bit of a difficult album to research a little bit. And he was like, I listened to a bunch of podcasts with Nick, including our own. And I was like, was it good? And he was like, yeah, we were just talking about how like this guy was shitting in like a bunch of buckets outside. And I was like, that, you know what? Honestly, I really like the consistency with like what we got going on. But you know, this podcast in general is taking kind of a look and a snapshot of what it was like back then and what it was like for you. And as opposed to just what's up? What do you got? What new music? Like, you know, that type of shit. I think we really try and with this podcast give a little bit of a glimpse, especially for the people that weren't there, like a new, younger generation and the generation that like was there, but maybe couldn't be there physically.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thank you so much for having me, by the way. You know how much I love you guys. I love you guys dearly. It's such a crazy thing to look back on because we're still an active band, we're still making music and touring and we have these anniversary tours, obviously, as we come up to the 10-year mark or a 15-year mark of records. And that's amazing too. But
brother, you're coming up to the 20th on this one.
Yeah, I know. This year is 20 year of our second album, One Fell Swoop, which was right before No Really I'm Fine. And it's great. It's cool to get to do that and to relive that. But also, I just feel so fortunate to get to have done this for this long and have people, care enough about it to connect with it in the way they do in their own special way. And this record, No Really I'm Fine, is probably one I'm most proud of for sure. I'm just thankful to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
You're good. I watched a lot of interviews with you over the last week. You are a good.
I'm sorry.
No, the thing is you're. It felt like you were media trained before that. Maybe I even knew what that term meant.
That's funny.
Yeah, you you can.
I love that.
You can really go back and take a listen to you, and you're incredibly pretty consistent. There's like a couple things that you are not, and neither am I. Like over the course of however long we've been doing this thing, it changes a bunch. But there was one thing in this particular that you were not consistent about, which was.
Oh, I want to know.
I'm going to tell you because I go up and down with it. It was the internet is the one thing that like. There's some interviews where you're like, it's awesome. We started on this. And then you're like, I don't know if this is, which like fair, right? Like, I think it's fair to change those things over time. And I'm of the sort where I think that is bad, but
I appreciate that. That's so funny that you watched those and would notice that, because I do think as of the last maybe, I want to say, I don't know, 9 years, I do feel fortunate to have the tools of the internet as to connect and get our music out there further. But I do, i.e., social media and whatnot. But those platforms are good, and I fully get it, to connect further with the fan base and with your friends or family or whatever you're creating. But I do feel as though it's an incredible tool for any creator, whether it's artists, in my case, obviously just making music, to connect with your fan base and stay, I guess, relevant, if that's a good way to put it. But I think it's a social experiment that has gone maybe far beyond our control at this point. And I think that we have no idea what the ramifications or the long-term effects will be. I think that there's, I just don't know. I mean, there's no stopping it now, so there's no use in thinking, of stopping it. But I do feel as though it's kind of the way it's become, specifically with social media, the way it's become a tool for just oversaturation, overexposure, and division, and those things are just inevitable. But I think it's just it just kind of bums me out. It's real. I feel like it's a bit poisonous, albeit I am, I fall, not victim, I suppose, but I participate in a scroll here or there. But I have friends that are much more connected in that way, and I just wonder what that's doing to the mind. And I mean, these are just things that I think about on a daily basis. So I will say, I do fall most currently on the side of, like, I think this might be really bad for us, but I don't know what.
Right. What's the answer? And mainly, not like, look, there's plenty of other podcasts that people can listen to me, like, really go into why I think that we should be grounded for a year and get it taken
yeah,
away.
They should have taken away TikTok for like just a little bit longer.
Yeah, they should just. That's what everybody needs to realize, like, what they have. You have to take it away in order for people to be like, all right, we're going to actually go back to being our best behavior. Because and the reason, like, look, it's difficult because you can't discount the positive. Of it. There's so much, and you were in the interviews that I was listening to. Like, that was back then, that was besides like people coming to your shows and talking to you after shows, which isn't like, that's a little bit of a far cry now. It's not like as a common thing. People are like, I'm scared. The shows are bigger security. Fucking not as common. So it is that like thing that people have now to connect with artists. And so, but back then, if you had diehard fans, you're talking to them and hanging out with them after shows, and it's hard to emulate that feeling.
Absolutely. I mean, we put in for the first like 7 years of the band. I mean, it was like just mandatory, if not just like a part of the show, that after we were done or before, I mean, you're putting in an hour to 2 hours, maybe plus, at the merch line, just like hanging out. And it's not to say I wouldn't want to do that now. It's just, it has gotten different. I think it can get, it clogs up any people that may want to purchase the merch, which is obviously the number one source of income. But then we also sell VIPs, which I feel like I don't want to, devalue their experience. But it's also not that I don't want to connect with those fans, but that just was that's just what it was. It was a sign of that time, was to connect in that way.
Yeah. I mean, I did hear a quote from you in one of these interviews where you were like, yeah, it was about if I was playing in New Brunswick, New Jersey for like 10 people, it was like making sure those 10 people had the best time. So they would go and tell 10 more of their friends. So the next time you came to town, they would come to your show. And it's that is kind of lost these days because it's so much about the internet. But at the same time, dude, like a lot of these TikTok acts, they think that they can book like a big ass slot and then nobody comes to their shows. So it doesn't always translate.
It doesn't translate. The numbers don't translate to the actual, your following doesn't translate to the, fucking ticket sales.
No, absolutely not.
All right, let's jump back into the album a little bit. Let's veer off. I mean, you did get signed from the internet, right? Like, You originally
Yeah.
got found off of mp3.com. Is that correct?
mp3.com, baby.
Getting signed from what's his name? Brad Fischetti?
Brad Fischetti.
Fischetti. He's from
Fischetti.
LFO.
It sounds delicious.
Yes, he was the super. It was a rare. It's a delicacy. It's an Italian delicacy. Yeah, he's from the boy band LFO, and he's from. I believe he's from the Florida area, Orlando, Florida. And
Bro, did one of those guys like have AIDS and die?
Unfortunately, 2 of them have passed. So he is the only surviving member of the band.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's very, very tough. He actually does do some touring as LFO, like kind of in a memoriam sense for the boys. I mean, because they still have fans, that are like.
But it's just F now.
It's just F, yeah.
That's a solid joke.
Yeah, I don't know if that's like how they got their name, but it feels like that might be. But also, I don't know. Yeah, Brad Fischetti was incredible, man. There was definitely some not so great business dealings as we got upstream to Warner.
That was the thing that I've been curious about in my research here is like, what happened to get you guys to Warner Brothers? Was it like an upstream thing? Like that was the thing that I didn't find a lot of info on.
Yeah. So we had gotten signed. I signed with 111 Records for the first record, which was really just me and a few friends. It was like almost some of the songs are actually just demos that I just wanted to like put out there. I was just leaving a Christian metal band I was in for an album called Nodes of Ranvier. And I had just left them to continue Spill Canvas with the hopes of getting a full band at some point.
Does that stuff exist?
Nodes of Ranvier, yeah, the record I'm on is out there. Derek Hess did the artwork for it. He's done he did some a bunch of stuff. I mean, he's an incredible comic book artist.
And you were the screamer?
It's self-titled.
Were you screaming?
No, I just play guitar and
okay.
I just play guitar. And then I did sing. There is some singing, standalone singing. The first time I actually was recorded on anything was on that record.
Damn.
But yeah, it's I left that to do Spill, and we got that first record out, and then the upstream really happened after our second record was One Fell Swoop, which is we had toured. I had the band together. We were like officially doing the rock band thing that I wanted to do.
My favorite Spill album.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it was crazy. It just came together. We got to record that with Ed Rose down in near Lawrence, Kansas, the Black Lodge Get Up Kids studio there. And it just, we were young and so hungry. And the record label, Brad Fischetti's label, got a deal, an upstream deal, they called it like an incubator. Mm-hmm. And so they signed, they had it was called East West, which was the division of Warner Brothers. They had Triple Crown Records under their umbrella as well. So within this incubator, as far as I understood it, if anything popped off or if they really believed in something, they would, that was in their backyard, growing in their backyard. They'd be like, okay, well, that's ours under this umbrella. Let's put more energy and focus into that. And so that's where we got signed to Sire or Warner Brothers there for the third record.
Got it. And so that record, you guys came out to LA, you recorded it with Neil Avron here at Sunset Sound. I've heard you talk a little bit about that experience. What was that like for you guys? Coming from Sioux Falls, South Dakota to the big city, Hollywood dreams, out here making music.
Dude, it was truly, even at the time, there was none of us were taking it for granted. There was none of that kind of stuff happening. It was just every day was an absolute dream. We understood the value of how lucky we were, because obviously there's talent involved in these things, but it's a lot of timing and circumstances that have to line up just perfectly. and we just happened to fall within that, and we knew how incredible it was. I mean, they were pouring all this money into it. They let us do all of the songs we wrote and, you know, demoed to them ourselves. Like, there was no notes. It was just like, go do this. And it was incredible. I mean, the first day we got there, I remember the studio like guide, or maybe he worked there, an intern or something. Yeah, at Sunset Sound, he brought us around to each studio. There's like an A and B, maybe a C room as well. And in the A room, there's a vocal booth where he's like, and here's where Jim Morrison famously cut the vocals while he was receiving fellatio. And I was like, you know, I was just like, oh my God. And I was like, cool. It's so overwhelming and so fucking awesome to get to have those memories. There's so many memories from that session. We spent a good 2 months just living. We lived in Burbank, and then we drove in.
Where did you guys live in Burbank?
We lived, honestly, it was on the same road as the Tonight Show. It was not the Oakwood, but it was right next to a Paquito Mas.
Oh yeah, I know exactly where that is in Burbank.
Yeah,
you're right by Warner Brothers. They wanted to keep you close.
You know, we've talked to a couple other artists that, you know, came out here from other places, and it's interesting to see the way that the songwriting and the songs progressed from coming from another place and then coming to California, and what the album would have sounded like if they would have stayed there. And, you know, one specific like incredible example, which is somebody that I've seen you been like, yeah, this is like one of the best guys and best songwriters ever, was Chris Connolly, Saves the Day.
Oh my gosh.
He
absolutely.
Yeah, we talked to him about was it Stay? I think Stay What You Are. And he was like, dude, it absolutely had an effect on the way that album came out. It would not have sounded like that if we stayed in New Jersey.
Oh, that's so cool to hear.
Was that like that for you guys? Like, do you think that being in this fucking environment, like?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that it had a huge effect because Neil Avron also wanted us to, we had enough songs, but he was like, you know, we need like 3 or 4 more. I really encouraged my bands to like write within the studio or write within the pre-production room. And so we were doing pre-pro, you know, for a couple weeks, and I would go home every night and just try to write. And you're in these, you know, these furnished, they're like a hotel or like a furnished apartment. And you're just, I mean, I also had, it's not that I don't have hope now, but it's just like, you're so full of hope because you're just so young, and, you know, the life hasn't done its thing in a lot of ways, as far as just like adversity. Like, you know, we definitely had adversity. We come from South Dakota, but at the same time, I mean, I was 20, I don't know, whatever that was, 24 or 23.
Yeah, like what
maybe.
A fucking cool age to be. Yeah, it really is like the best, where you're just like, oh, shit is awesome, and I can't see how this is the best it's gonna get.
Yeah, like this is, but I did have a feeling. I was like, I really need to, I think we all did, to soak that up, that energy. I think it shows. There's like songs like The Truth, I wrote that song there, that ended up on the record. Song Low Fidelity, I wrote there.
So somehow Low Fidelity popped out to me as, oh, this song wouldn't have been made in South Dakota. It just doesn't. It's too like warm and sunny.
Yeah, it doesn't. And also, that one has the only horns on the record. We had Neil Avron. We came in one day, and Neil was like, "So I got horn players coming in because he plays trumpet. He's an incredible trumpet player. He's like, I want to try some horns on Low Fidelity. What do you think?" And I was like, absolutely. So he calls these 3 old guys in. They're like old grandpa dudes, and his name is Jerry Hay, and I apologize, I can't remember the other 2 gentlemen's names, but they just whip together this horn part, and as they're playing and recording in the main room, and I'm getting like video on like one of those, you know, video like devices,
like flip phone or like a flip camera,
flip cam, and I'm looking at at whatever they played on, and they played horns on like Thriller and like Toto.
Wasn't it?
And like,
is that guy Beck's dad? Is that what it is?
Yeah, Beck's dad did strings for 2 songs. His name's David Campbell. He's
David Campbell,
incredible.
got it.
Oh my gosh. He looks just like him too, which is crazy. But like, it's just those things, you know, seeing Avenged Sevenfold was recording a record at the next to us the whole time in the Studio A. And so it's like just being around these things, you know, and like Jewel was there one day, and then Sarah McLachlan was. It was just like, you're just kind of like, it's overwhelming as a South Dakota, you know, native.
In general, this is a term that I heard you use, and I found it really accurate. I found it really, really accurate in the way that you describe these songs and your songwriting and this album in a whole, or just the Spill Canvas. And the term was scrapbook. It feels like it feels like a scrapbook. And I was like, damn, that is a really, really good and accurate term to describe a lot of these songs.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's, I mean, it makes sense. I would use that. I think, yeah, it's, cause that's what it is, right? Like there's, you know, although like All Over You was the big single on that record, that song was just, wasn't even going to be recorded, you know, and that song was an afterthought of like a relationship I had, of my first like long-term relationship. But then there were newer songs that had to do with, it's just like all of those very, very fervent and like intense feelings that you feel when you're that age. There's a lot of piss and vinegar. There's a lot of passion, at least for me, within that realm of songwriting. And so I just wrote about every one of those things. And it really is like a snapshot of, lyrically, at least, what I was going through and just in my life at that time. And I feel it's just so cool to get to have done that, man. I feel so fortunate and lucky.
Now, so we talked a little bit about some of the liner notes here, some of the credits on the album. 2 of the more prominent ones, Andrew McMahon and Anthony Green, also have guest spots on here. Andrew McMahon plays keyboards on Saved, and Anthony Green does background vocals on Bleed. Everyone's Doing It. Can you talk a little bit about how that came to be? It's actually kind of a 2-part. Well, yeah, it's kind of a 2-part question. I'll save the second part.
Sure. Yeah.
Andrew McMahon just literally played Jack's Manic in Venice. Like he just played like the Jack's Manic in Venice, like the day before. And I heard it was fucking sub.
Yeah, I just find that man to be wildly inspiring. It's hard not to. He's so incredible. I have
a funny story about him. I'll tell it after this.
Yes, please. We crossed paths because they were working with Reprise or Sire, I believe at the time, the same gentleman that had signed us. And it was just, as you're out there in LA, there's like a dinner or a this or a that to go to, specifically when we were kind of managed on that label and young and trying to make nice with people. But we crossed paths with each other, and I was smoking so much weed at the time. And I mean, he was as well. And I think he was also, I don't know where he was with his health, but I don't know. But I think it was just like a bonding thing, and we just vibed. And I was like, "Will you come just like hang out and like if you want to play piano, like you know what I mean?" It just kind of worked out, and it was just it was insane. It just blew my mind.
Well, I mean, back then, like, what did you know him from? Like, were you like, you know, because he's had a lot of projects since, and it's like
so. Yeah, I mean, Something Corporate was a big. Like I remember, I don't know, it was like a LimeWire download of like Constantine or something, you know?
Fuck yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, like what is this? And like it's so long and it's like, you know, that's so good. And I loved everything that he's done since then. I mean, everything in Transit, is that right? Yeah. I mean, that record just like for sure it had a huge impact on me. And it was just, I felt so honored to have him there.
I'll tell this funny story. So I used to live with our mutual friend Susie, who's a producer and songwriter, and nice. she does like a ton of sessions all the time. And over the pandemic, we were like, let's just get a house because of the dogs and the yard, and we were like, who knows what the world's gonna look like, so might as well just have a house with a fucking yard. And I wake up one morning, and she's fucking blasting Jack's Manic. Like it's like so unbelievably loud. Like, cause we have a piano, it is a sessions and all this shit. And I wake up and I'm like, what the Susie, shut the fuck up, dude. Turn down Jack's. And I walk out and it's Andrew McMahon just like playing the piano, and he's playing Jack's Manic, and she had a session with him. And I was like, Susie, I love this shit, but shut the fuck up. What's up, dude? I like it because it sounded like the album, and I was like,
that's funny.
Yeah, I also incredible. Like had to do radio, and this was like when we couldn't go into the studio. I think I recorded, and I needed someplace to go, and I made my car was in like a shop or something. I believe I recorded an episode of radio for K-Rock in the back of Andrew McMahon's car. That was the episode that I did. Like a really, what a strange, you're like locked down during the pandemic. Andrew McMahon's in my house, and then I'm like, gotta do radio, and he's like, you just go in my car.
We had him at emo night once at the Echoplex.
Yeah, really? Oh wow!
And he won't play on like a keyboard. He needs a real piano. And
needs a real thing. Okay.
We had to rent one, and we learned that when you rent a piano, they charge you by step. So like every step is like another, $3,000. I think there were like 3 or 4 steps at the Echoplex. They had to get the piano up, and that's how they determine the rate.
Yeah, isn't that wild? Like
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's also like one of those like logistical things there's no way that anybody would ever think about that until you're absolutely like put in that position to be like, all right, that makes sense. And also,
because you think about it, it's just. It's like a car. It's a small car or something. You know what I mean? It's so heavy. They're so heavy. That's
heavier
crazy,
than a smart car.
My my favorite thing. Well, I actually have like a bigger overarching like statement question situation here. It's like listening back and like listening to the Spill Canvas. You're like I am like I don't. If somebody like didn't show it, if I didn't know it was like in the realm of like what we listen to, like in this circle of shit, I wouldn't like, I don't know if I would consider it like emo or alternative. And I'm like, I think it's just rock. And it's like, why do you think that you got grouped in with this scene?
Yeah, I always wondered that too, because of, there's just telltale things that happen within this scene. I think specifically that time frame of 2007, but even today, I know it's a lot more wide ranging today, which I enjoy. But I think that specifically then that scene of emo is just like, I always thought we were just more of a broad thing because I love so much music. Like I'm a huge fan of like a few bands specifically within each genre. Like I am obsessed with like backpack rap and hip hop, and like I love a few metal bands here, but that's like specific metal bands, and within rock, like I grew up with Jimmy Eat World. Like Clarity was just a massive part of my life, and Death Cab and Saves the Day at Get Up Kids. And I don't know why that stuff never seemed to like why some of those telltale markers, I don't even know how to explain it personally, but they never translated to what came out when I felt this was the best option to go with the song or whatever I had come up with melodically or lyrically. And I think that maybe, I don't know, I think it was just authentically us. And I think that it also hit, I think maybe, I know at the time we were, I was friendly, and I haven't talked to him in many moons, but Jason Tate from Absolute Punk, I remember we were close as far as AIM buddies. Mm-hmm. And I just was so kind of plugged in at that moment to like what that scene was. But when we got signed to Warner, I felt like we could just do whatever we wanted. And I just wanted to make a rock record, it's really cool you said that, because I love all, it doesn't matter what you want to, however you define it, but.
Yeah, it's totally it's like it is splitting hairs, right?
Well, there was a quote here that says somewhere in between the All American Rejects and Matchbox 20, there's the Spill Canvas.
It's pretty accurate. And you did mention, you're like, oh, it is of the time and place. And I think that was what was so special about the genre that we, occupy this, it's because, there's so many artists that like are emo, right? And you listen to it and you're like, that's just like on surface level, I don't know if it is, but
on the spectrum.
Yeah.
It's on the spectrum.
And you're like, I don't know. But and since they were growing up and being around and touring and listening to and influenced by these artists, they just got lumped into it. And I think
it's much more like about a scene than it is a sound.
And I think that's really cool. And I just didn't know if you like how you felt about that, if that was like something you were like, fuck it, I'm going to ride this thing. I'm happy to be a part of it. Or you were like actively trying to be like, I think, cause you did tour with like One Republic and which like,
crazy.
Bananas. I have friends in that band, and I tried to get a hold of them to ask if they like remember anything about it for this interview.
You do? Who?
Will. I mean Ryan and Will and my friend Jared, who's not. He wasn't in. He was a part of it, but he didn't. I don't think he toured with you guys.
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, really,
cool.
We'll let Nick answer the question.
No, those guys. Wait, what was the question?
The question was if you tried to get outside of the scene or if you embraced
actively,
it.
Actively try to steer away. No, never tried to steer away. I was a huge fan of all of the bands that are within specifically that time frame, and I was just again. Maybe it's just a Midwest or South Dakota thing or whatever. We are just so fortunate and feel so grateful to get to be within the same breath and conversation as those other acts, But then when we got tours like the One Republic tour and there was like two Goo Goo Dolls tours and Switchfoot, and like this stuff was just outside of anything we understood what to do with. And I'm so glad we had those experiences, but it was nice to also feel a bit like a Swiss Army knife. I've always at least tried to pride myself on writing stuff that's like, okay, that type or this thing, or, like it can break down to just me and acoustic and be like so over the top, like love song, like the song Lullaby on No Really I'm Fine. And then to a song like, I think Reckless Abandonment, the first song on that record, which is just very like, it's a macro thing and micro in the verses, macro in the choruses. And it's like, it's a lot of piss and vinegar in that stuff too. And I'd like to think we can cover all the bases. I think any band could, but I don't know.
I don't know if any band could.
That's sure. Yeah.
I didn't listen to the entire thing because it was like a breakdown of one song. And I was like, this is really cool that you did that. It was fucking long though for like one song. Like an hour and a half, but it was cool that you did that. And do you like when you got into this, like your level of like, do you understand like music theory, or was this like I know how to write, I know how to write songs and I'm working off of emotion? And
sure,
this is also a 2-part. And the longer that the more music theory that you, I guess, understood, especially working with like Neil, he was like teaching about, chorus structure and all this fucking shit. Like, did you find it harder to like tap into when you're like, I don't really know too much and I'm writing off what I feel? Cause you're trying to, you're like fucking trying to follow these like rules that almost were almost more beautiful when you didn't know that they existed.
Absolutely. I do long for the days when I was more it's not to say it doesn't happen a lot still. I am always going to be more prone to going with my just gut feeling and like just vibing out on something. And it could be like the same exact chords as the last song I wrote, or like that song, but like every song's already been written before, in my opinion anyway. So it's like just your take on that. And I do know a little music theory, and Neil, yeah, I've been getting into the song math portion of it, and Neil Avron even taught us lessons. Like for example, All Over You on No Really I'm Fine, that actually has one of his little lessons within it. If not, I mean, just to start it off with, which is like, so like within that first 2 seconds, 3 seconds, you can grab the audience in a way that like they will always know that is that song. For example, like we had a lot of the songs off No Really I'm Fine. When we demoed them out, we just started full band. It was just like rocking, like full band. And that's great. I didn't really care about that, but he was like, try this. Try starting with just you and guitar. And like, don't play chords, just play like something different. And so I love Alkaline Trio, and I was trying to like just play a little bit off Alkaline Trio within the chorus of All Over You, just a little kind of, it's like a 2-string, like single note kind of Skiba-esque run in my mind. And I tried that, and that was like, that's instantly now then the calling card for that song. It's these little simple things you wouldn't ever think of. I would never think of to start it like that. But I do get interested in song math, and like the current stuff, like what Bill Murray's doing is like incredible. I love like the Nashville pop stuff. It's very pleasing and accessible to the ear. But then I also love, one of my favorite artists of all time is Justin Vernon and Bon Iver. And that's just out of the box entirely, And so I really think I miss the days of just kind of letting go. But with the last 2 years and what I've been writing for Spill, which has come, I mean, some of the songs have come out, but we're getting in this year to do new stuff. And I'm really excited because it's a lot of just emotion-based things. And I'm not so much thinking about the theory or what the next chord is to go to, and getting caught up in maybe the song math of it, and just kind of making it happen.
You can really fucking get, like, it really sometimes just butt fucks you. Or you're like in like this fucking zone, and you're like, well, I have to follow this thing.
Yeah.
That I've been doing. It really, I also kind of miss, like, in general, right? Like in life, where you're like, sometimes this was better when I didn't know what I was doing. Like sometimes this like feels so much better just going off of like not knowing.
Yeah. I mean, like absolutely. In life too. Yeah. Because that's a very wise sentiment you just laid down there. Yeah. Very reminiscent of that. Like the first record, there's a song, our first record, there's a song called All Hail the Heartbreaker. Mm-hmm. It has like 4 bridges. It's like bridge. And then it just goes, but it's really just another song at the end, which I just wouldn't typically do now because I'm so used to writing a pretty set structure, but that's just out of habit. But there's records like Is a Real Boy that just like took structure and it was like, you can do those things, but like you can also twist it on its head. And like I said, Justin Vernon from Bon Iver. And I don't know.
Is a Real Boy is a really good example of that. I wouldn't have
incredible.
I wouldn't have, that wouldn't have been like my first one to pick, but I think it might be like the ultimate one to pick, thinking about it.
I just have a couple of like random things that I wanted to clarify because there's such little information like on the Wikipedia. There's like, one sentence about these things. So I'm just going to kind of like rapid fire them to you and you can expand on it a little bit.
Okay.
So Saved, we already talked about that. Andrew McMahon played keyboards on the album version, but the song was previously recorded and featured in the movie Superman Returns. Is that correct?
So it was supposed to be that movie following the success of Spider-Man, I believe, and like Vindicated being that soundtrack and like that being a big soundtrack for that movie. They wanted to kind of emulate that. So they we got, I guess, just tapped to write a song for that soundtrack. They ended up, however, ditching the soundtrack and scoring the film with an orchestra. So I know Paramore, I believe, did a song that is on there as well. I don't know if it was specifically for that, but I wrote "Saved" in the van on the way down to the studio, to Ed Rose's studio, to demo it. And I was like, I'm just writing about Superman. Like, that's it, right? I'm just going to write about Superman.
Had you seen the movie when you were writing the song?
No.
No, you were just like, in general, I'm writing about Superman.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I'm just going to write about like, kind of like a Superman.
Okay. All right.
But you are like a comic guy. Like a fucking cartoon guy. Right?
I love cartoons. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The other random thing that I saw a lot of, no clear answers, but I guess the album was supposed to be called Conduit originally, or at least that's what the internet community thought. And then you were like, it's actually not called that. And then in 2021, you did release Conduit.
Yeah. I pitched Conduit. I tried to sell it to Warner Brothers and our management at the time, and Michael Goldie, who signed us, and he's incredible. Everyone was at Warner Brothers was like, no. And I was just like, I was ready to die on that hill, because I just also didn't know I didn't know you had to kind of be a little more strategic with what hills you're going to die on regarding a major label deal. And so I was like, well, there's this other title I had, and I just threw that out, and they just like latched onto that right away.
No, really, I'm Fine is such a good title.
Yeah. Thank you, man.
I have some personal questions. Did you feel free to answer them or not?
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want.
Absolutely.
I think you've been pretty open, so have I, about like all the shit that we did. I didn't know this awesome story that you rear-ended one of those like LA fucking X like shuttle buses. That's so awesome. That's it. Now they have like this like so many more, and it's like they're taking you to concentration camps. Like,
was it LAX bus, or was it like?
It was LAX. It was while we were recording our fourth record. And it was just full peak opiate crisis, as well as, which now they are calling it that. But I just was a mess, and I went to someone's house to pick up, and albeit, mind you, I'm the only person within the band that is doing anything. So like the other guys are maybe having.
Were you trying to like? Were there times where you like? I mean, as all good drug addicts do, we try to hide it and stuff. And like within the band, like you guys ever have like a fucking where they like sit you down and they're like, hey, stop.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, following this crash, so we were recording Formalities, which was the fourth album, and in LA there, and I was just so obviously using. I still had not been to any treatments or anything like that, but it was just so obvious, and I knew that they knew, but I also tried to hide it, and we just didn't talk about it. But I ended up crashing at like 3 a.m. I was going like 60. I fell asleep, and I hit like an LAX shuttle bus or something. And I hit, and I flew around 180 on the road, and I got to this there's like just a straight drop down. Ugh. Like I don't know how. If I knew where it was, right near LAX, it's like you look over, it's all LAX is right there, and like the van just like, and it just came back down, and they didn't even like. I just said I fell asleep, and they didn't even like. I was so lucky.
You like didn't go to jail, right?
No, they didn't even like check anything.
They didn't breathalyze you or anything.
No, I had so many Vicodin, like just strewn about in the car I broke the steering wheel because I was holding it so hard, and like it was just very tough. It's a tough time. That morning rather, because it was 3 a.m., we had to shoot the video for this song, Our Song, and we were supposed to be on set at 10:30 a.m. So if you watch the Our Song video, I look horrible. I also have a concussion that I kept, falling asleep through. Everyone was quite mad at me, as well as worried about me. So they had to put a filter on that whole video because I looked so sickly. They couldn't fix it with makeup and everything. So it was tough, man. But I don't know that I would trade those things because I'm very open and vocal about it. I wouldn't trade them because it made me who I am today.
Yeah, I mean, I understand more than anybody. It's like I wouldn't trade those things either. It's like it is just such a, the older I get, whereas like I think that stuff is so. I mean, they make for incredible stories if you live through it,
yes,
right? Like they make for like really amazing. That's in general, that's a great story, right?
Sure.
But it could have not been.
It could have not been. And it's more like incredible in the way of like, to me anyways, and I am, I've battled with my sobriety and in and out of the relapses and that is wildly challenging, and I have the support system in place. I have all the tools and everything, but that doesn't negate from the fact that like those crazy days and that the roller coaster that is addiction it permeates so much of the music in a negative way when I look back on it, but also it's such a positive way because I'm still here. Like, I mean, there's so much worse stories than that, like ODing on fentanyl and stuff like that several years ago. And that stuff's crazy hard, but I'm here still. And I hope to be an advocate for those that are not even advocate, just to let them know you're not alone and like, don't think that you can't do it,
Well, you got two guys right here that are fucking doing stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's totally possible to get out of it. It feels like an endless cycle of insanity, but the during the making of the album that we're talking about, like where were you at?
Nothing. No, really, I'm fine is squeaky clean other than an occasional whiskey and a lot of marijuana.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, that's such a funny thing to be like, dude, I was totally good, but just like a lot of whiskey and weed, which is like I'm too. I'm like, what? It was just like 12 beers.
Yeah. No, it's the justification minimization really starts to rear its head there. But I think just in retrospect, in the grand scheme, I obviously I've graduated to worse things and. So to say like, I do also believe I can't smoke marijuana anymore. Unfortunately, it's been like 12 years maybe, but it doesn't, I think it's an incredible medicine personally.
Did you like, even though you weren't like using like hard drugs during that time, did now knowing a much more about addiction and looking back at that time, recording and writing that album, did you how it comes out in other ways, like how if we're not taking care of it, it's like we're obsessing over this, we're fucking doing some dumb shit over here, and it might not necessarily be drugs and alcohol, but it's filling that thing. And during the recording and writing of this album, like was there any of that? Did you notice, like looking back, being like, I was fucking weird about this shit?
Yeah, like addict behavior still prior to actually realizing I was an addict. I would say, the obsessive portion you referred to was much more present back then. I think that there was like, it still is like everything has to be, I mean, I will get caught up and go in a circle over like, how this like coaster on my studio desk is like not lined up exactly. And I've been thinking about it this whole time we've been talking, and I keep reaching over and touching it and like making sure it's just like lined up against the, like these are just little idiosyncrasies that I'm sure everyone has, but knowing I have an addict brain and knowing that it was just ready to be to come into existence while we recorded this record is a crazy thing. There's a lot of foreshadowing. When we got signed to Warner Brothers, we did release an EP as our first release with Sire called Denial Feels So Good. It was right before No Really I'm Fine. We recorded it in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and we were very excited. And there's a song on there called To Live Without It. And I was just like, what if like I wrote a song from like the perspective of like someone who's like a big cokehead or something. Like I've never done cocaine, but like what if I did that? And I just went with like, I'm gonna write a song from like a drug addict's like point of view, fully foreshadowing my future self. I didn't do coke then or hard drugs then from that song to what I did for another 5 years. But just to like, it's a little creepy, but it's cool to see how that can, I don't know, maybe there was, who knows?
Yeah, I find all of this stuff incredibly interesting. Like I think that because it's, we listen to all this music that, we have, even though these artists might not have been on anything, it's like, how does this personality trait come out in like the songwriting process and the songs in general? Like, is there instances where we can see that even before it began? And I was really looking for that in this album when I was listening to it.
Well, I think even, it's like we said at the top of the show, it's been almost 20 years, right? So looking back on these songs now, like you're obviously going to have quite a different perspective on a lot of things. And, like we just talked about, maybe there's some insight on things that came out like subconsciously, or things like looking back now, you're like, oh, like that's really what I was going through at that point. What are some of the standout tracks on this album for you? And looking at it through the lens of 20 years in the rear view, like what else has changed, about these tracks? Have any of the songs taken on new meanings for you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. I will say, like, I recently, just this last month, I just decided to do a live stream each week for the last 3 weeks, like an Instagram live, just me and my phone and an acoustic, like I had done during the pandemic or whatever. And I went back into songs off this record that I hadn't played in a while, or just hadn't played acoustic as well. I love that. I really love the way that it's ever changing how, I was in a specific spot when I wrote, X song. For example, this song Battles, the third track. I was so very obviously having mental health issues at the time, but I just went to my, general practitioner, just my, standard doctor, and he just threw me on some antidepressants. And I was like, I don't even know if I'm really depressed though, but like, I don't know. And then like he threw me on some anxiety medication. Like, it's like, I don't really know if that's even it. And that song has taken on a ton of new meaning for me personally, because I've about 9 years ago I went in and got the right diagnosis, have schizoaffective disorder. So this is like schizophrenia and bipolar, like with all the highlights, like the best of in one kind of nightmarish thing. And so then all the paranoia starts to make sense. And, this is, I'm paranoid, and without substance, but I do think that those songs like that, or I specifically talk about, my medication and drinking in that song, but I didn't really realize that it was kind of like, it is very impactful to me, as well as others that are struggling within mental health, like issues that are kind of crippling, and you have to take stock, and you have to take it seriously. And I really wasn't taking it seriously then. And I just got the catharsis and the healing via writing the songs, and I didn't do any of the work. And looking back, like that's a standout for me. I really love this song. I really love Reckless Abandonment because I'm always writing love songs. It's easy to write those, and it's easy to write bitter love songs or like a break, whatever. Those are immediately accessible. But the way I feel about the world, or like an angry song about the human race and like being on this planet. And I'm a kind of a nerd for the fact that all those like kind of big macro, a bit existential like thoughts. And I love that song so much. And that one really, I'm proud of that one. I'm proud of the whole thing, but I'd say Battles and Reckless are big ones for me in this current part of my life, I think.
My standout track from this album is called Appreciation and the Bomb.
Oh, yeah.
I just love that fucking bridge at the end.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about what it's like to literally call people out by name. Like, that song, like you list like your dad and I think it's Brittany and then your mom and
my mom. Yeah.
What is it like to call people out directly in a song? Like that takes some fucking big balls.
Yeah. And also like their reaction, like when they hear it, like that's also something we don't hear like the perspective. I'm like, it's like kind of the same thing. I'm like an actress or an actor does like a nude scene and I'm like, did your mom see this?
Yeah. Absolutely. No. Yeah. It's, the bridge of Appreciation is, man, it's tough. Like, not tough in a bad way per se, but it was just, I think I'm maybe also obsessive about being authentic when I get into the lyrical space. Like, I can't even tell you the depths that my mind goes when I get in that flow state of like, it's a flow state, but it is, I do think it's like wildly out of my control. It is not me operating anymore. It is just, I'm putting it together and I'm like, this is how I feel. No, that doesn't feel right. And so when I got to that bridge, I just was like, what if I'm just speaking right to them. And so like, I love my dad's incredible. I love my dad. He's still the dude, like he's the number one dude. And unfortunately, my mom, we had a tumultuous relationship and she passed about probably 7 or 8 years ago. So I sing it a bit different today. When she did hear that song, it was tough because I speak about how she doesn't make it out to shows. It was always kind of a point of contention with us. So she supported me, but there was always a little more that I needed from her. And being a latchkey kid and only child and all that stuff, I felt I was a bit bitter towards her. But during the end of her time, I got to see her in hospice. And the last 2 years of her life I was very close with her in the way that I could be. I was living in Florida, but I got to see her, and that really healed so much for me. But I do sing that lyric a bit differently today, just because it's post what is that, posthumously? Yeah. But and then Brittany, that's like the first love, and that since then I've been married, and and everything else, and it's like, I don't know. I think that I would never have taken that back. None of them reacted poorly. I think if anything, with time, it's that bridge specifically and those lyrics just to them is very meaningful, I think, to those people. But I don't know that I could do it today.
Yeah.
Really.
I started taking a spin and writing and recording music again, and like, yes. I will do something and then I'll go out and listen to it, or like in the car, you do like a car thing, and I'm like, fuck, I have to change this immediately, and I can't looking back on this album, when you're listening back to it, or you're like, I wish I would have done that. Like, I wish I would have done that differently. Are there any parts or lyrics on this thing that you're like, I wish I would have done that differently?
Yes, there's inevitably there will be a lot of those, but this one specifically, there's two things. There's this song "Connect the Dots," which is like this wildly, overtly sexual song. That I still am proud of. Again, another song I don't know how to write today, but a lot of hormones going on back
Just
then.
not as horny these days.
Yeah, just not as horny. So horny back then. But I think like that last chorus, the way that I sing it live, I belt it, and I belt it and I sing it the octave up. I wish I would have done that. That's just a small thing, but there's a big thing in this song, "The Truth," which is like the fourth song or fifth song, maybe. The pre-chorus is just "Time doesn't wait for anyone" is the lyric. And the way that I sang it with my inflection, and I don't know how this made it past Neil and all of us, it sounds like I'm saying Tom doesn't wait for anyone. Every pre-chorus, Tom doesn't wait for anyone. And it's like, who the fuck is Tom? And like, why is he so impatient? You know?
Yeah. That's so funny. That's exactly what Morgan's talking about. That's hilarious. I think that's like my favorite answer that we've gotten to that.
I actually was gonna like.
Oh, you're gonna say something that he should have changed?
No, I was gonna commend.
I want to hear it.
No, I was gonna commend you for saying like having that opinion of it, because pretty much everybody that we talk to is like, yeah, I mean, there's stuff I don't like, but I wouldn't change a thing. And I think it's like really cool to hear two specific examples of something that the artist would be like, yeah, dude, I would absolutely change that. And
what if I was just like, yeah, you mentioned so many people by name. Tom, Brittany, Mom, Dad.
Brittany, Mom, Dad. Oh my God. Yeah, I don't know who. It's funny too, because like, I noticed it probably like the year after it came out, and I was like, oh my God, like the song came on, I was listening to it.
Do other people think that, or is it just like you heard it that way and now you can't stop hearing that?
There's been a couple fans that are like, can I ask you at VIPs and stuff that have asked?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm so glad you asked me that. Like,
yeah, it's not Tom.
It's not Tom. I don't know Tom. And no, I just believe in like, I believe in what it is as a whole. I wouldn't change like the most of the nuts and bolts, but like I'm so obsessed with like being better than I was, like making that better. Like, okay, that's great. And take a beat and take a step back and like, oh my God, it can be so much better. I could be better. And I'm just so obsessed with that concept. Maybe it doesn't translate to every area of my life, but specifically artistically and lyrically in songs and writing it, it's just like, I'm obsessed with it, man.
Okay. So we always close the show with if you like this, you might like that. So if somebody likes No Really, I'm Fine by the Spill Canvas, what else do you think they like?
Oh my God.
And it doesn't have to be music. It can be like, oh, they like whiskey or whateber.
That's actually pretty good. We haven't done that. We've never like done
we did it with Derek. That was it.
Oh yeah.
Like non-music.
It could be music.
It could be music.
Most of the time it's music.
Yeah, that seems more, because then I feel like if I'm saying you might like, it feels like I might be picking on a specific type of person. You know, like if you like No Really I'm Fine, you might have liked or still like using a flat iron on your hair or something, you know?
Totally.
You know what I mean? But I think that's tough.
Well, what were you listening to a lot when you were making this?
I was listening to a lot of, again, like I really love this. I was listening to this artist. I really love this artist, A$AP Rock, not A$AP Rocky. A$AP Rock. He's just like but see, that's the thing. It doesn't like translate. You know what I mean? That's why I don't think people would like that. I think he's an incredible MC from New York, I believe. But his album None Shall Pass came out. Then I was really listening to that a lot. But then I was also listening to, I don't know, man. I mean, everything that was current at that time within that scene.
Joni, who does research for our podcast and helps us put these shows together, she had a note here she's like, people would love Cradle Song, Rob Thomas. She's like, it's uncanny how similar their voices are. Do you get that a lot?
Mm-hmm.
I've never thought that, but that's interesting.
I didn't ever think that. I don't hate Matchbox 20. But it is funny because the last name, obviously it's a common last name, so it's not like crazy, but
your dad.
Yeah, he's my dad. He's my dad. There was, what was it? I was so stoked. AP reviewed this record. No, really, I'm fine. And they said that I sounded like Rob Thomas, I believe, or maybe it was one of our records. It actually was two records after that. They said I sounded like Rob Thomas. That was the first time I had heard that on the record Gestalt. But I'll take it. I listened. There's a lot of infatuation with Coheed. Claudio is a huge influence. I love the band. I do think if I could see any person that my voice sounds like, it would be Claudio, with some of the stylings and the way he forms words. But that's an unintentional side effect of just like nonstop listening to that stuff. So.
All right. Well, any new stuff that you're listening to right now, or anybody that you think's doing a fucking awesome job? What's on your? Doesn't
have to be in this realm at all.
Sure. I love what Bill Murray's doing. I think it's so fun. I'm looking at my. I love what Bill Murray's doing. There's this artist, Medium Build, that I am just wow. I don't think he's from there, but I think he hails from Alaska, but his name's Nick as well. That was the first artist I met in a long time. He played here in Pittsburgh. He kind of blew up a bit. He had a record called Country come out last year. Incredible. But he played here in Pittsburgh, and I went and saw him before that record. And I waited afterwards to see him outside. I'm like, I'm going to do the thing, and I'm going to wait, and I'm going to tell this guy, like, your music has reignited my faith in just like honest songwriting. His lyrics are fucking insane. They're incredibly awesome. And I would highly suggest Medium Build for some heavy, masterful lyrics and songs. Incredible. Then I'm really into Joyner Lucas recently. He's incredible rapper, but that's about it.
I don't know who that is.
We'll have to check him out.
Joyner Lucas, so good.
All right. Well, Nick, thank you so much for being on CD Burners. I know you're going on the Emo's Not Dead cruise tomorrow. Have a great time. Mm-hmm. Be safe.
Thank you.
And it's just good to hang, even if it's like virtually. I just like hanging out with you.
Yeah, I do too. I don't want to go, but we have like so much shit to do.
You guys are busy, gentlemen.
You are too. I know you got to pack and shit.
I packed. It's all packed back there.
Good for you.
I'm ready to go. I love you guys so much, man. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're the man. Thank you so much. It's been a joy, knowing you and working with you.
Dude, I'll never forget when you picked me and Bryce up from the airport, and you had like a layer of there's like half a foot of trash on the floor of your car, and I was like, what are we getting into here? What are we getting? And to see from then till now, like how fucking sick it is.
It's still there.
You guys have done.
It's still
full trash car.
It's still in the car.
Good. I'm glad you didn't change.
No,
you haven't compromised your morals.
I probably am wearing the same thing.
It does. Yeah. It really. That's very true. I love you guys so much, man. Thank you for
love you too, brother. Thank you so much for being here, and thanks for all your insight on this album. Of course, we'll see you soon, I'm sure.
Sounds good, buddy.
All right, bro. Safe chat, man.